You don't have kids, be useful. My family stole $14,000 from my safe for my sister's baby. So I cut them off from everything I built. After hosting Christmas, I unlocked my safe. My emergency funds are gone. My father answered, "We gave it to your sister. She is establishing a family." My hands were cold. I called my lawyer that night. The next morning, a few emails were sent. Some accounts were checked. That afternoon, my sister called. "What did you do?" I just remarked, "You might want to check your inbox." Christmas was supposed to be calm this year. I hosted for once, not to brag, but because I figured if I supplied the warmth, they'd remember how to keep it. I cooked, cleaned, and purchased gifts for nieces and nephews who hardly recognized my name. My father sat at the head of the table like a statue in corduroy. My sister floats around the room, snapping pictures for her stories. And my mother? She was busy speaking behind folded napkins, too preoccupied to ask how I was doing. Nobody thanked me. Not for the food, not for the house, not even for allowing them to remain an extra 2 nights when their plumbing unexpectedly failed. I grinned through it. I let it go. I figured if I didn't make it about myself, they'd notice me anyhow. They did not. I went to check the safe after everyone had departed. The final pine needles had been vacuumed, and the wine glasses had been piled in the dishwasher. Not because I was concerned. Just a habit. Just something I did when the home was empty and the silence settled in. The combination clicks gently. The door swings open. And the cash was gone. Emergency funds. $14,000. Not a retirement fund. Not an investment. It's just about safety. The kind of money you save in case the world forgets about you. And it did. I did not panic. I did not shout. I just stood there, staring at the empty space as if it could apologize. That's when my father strolled in, cleaning his hands with a dish towel as if he lived here. "We gave it to your sister," he replied frankly. "She's starting a family." My hands got cold. Now we've borrowed it. Now she required assistance. Not even a warning. They opened my safe, took my emergency funds, and handed them away. And did not believe I deserved to know. I did not say anything. I walked to the corridor, sat on the bench by the coat rack, and took out my phone. One call. My lawyer answered the second call. "Evening," he said. "Something wrong?" I informed him what had happened. He hesitated and continued. "I'll start the paper trail tonight." I nodded, despite his inability to see me, hung up. The following hour was a blur. Several emails were sent out. Some accounts were checked. Keep everything quiet. Cold stuff. There is nothing dramatic. Not yet. That afternoon, my sister called. Her voice was sharp, furious, and half crying. "What did you do?" I did not raise my voice. I did not even sigh. "You might want to check your inbox," I remarked before hanging up. She messaged again, then again. And finally, "You're blowing this out of proportion." It was just sitting there. Emergency cash seems to appear out of nowhere, as if safes open themselves. I sat still. Coffee has gone cold. The laptop is silently blazing on my desk. Email threads are growing by the minute. I hadn't replied yet. I was remembering. This theft is just one of many. The safe was not a betrayal. It confirmed a trend too profound to ignore. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A week before her wedding, my credit card was charged $9,800. You don't have a spouse or kids, you might as well make yourself useful. The bridesmaids laughed. She smirked. I grinned back and replied, "Then I hope you find me useless real soon." They took the cash as if it were air. And when I canceled everything, they accused me of being vengeful. They said I had covered the mortgage previously, but it was only a bridging payment. Then I found them buying patio furniture a week later. I repaid her automobile loan in 2021. The same day, she uploaded a selfie with the caption, "Nothing feels better than financial independence." She did not even tag me. Every time I gave, they removed the origin. Every time I remained mute, they made it appear as if they built the ladder themselves. I remembered my mother's voice as I volunteered to co-sign their refinance. "You're the only one we can count on." She said it as a compliment, but it was actually a sentence. And now this. Taking from the safe was the final footnote. I was not the son. I was always expected to assist rather than to be noticed. Every flashback brings greater clarity. On Christmas Eve, my seat was assigned to a neighbor. You'll be fine in the kitchen. Anniversary supper for those who really matter. Backyard remodel, $12,400 obliterated with text. Don't be dramatic. My sister's RSVP cards list my name as the return address. Her wedding is my credit line. The voicemail from Dad, maybe it's better you don't come anymore. Each scene was not a moment. It was a data point. I ran the entire system. They merely kept cashing their dividends. And the scariest part? They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. They had become so comfortable using me. They ceased pretending that I was a part of it. Even still, a part of me wished they'd stop before it was too late. I was not hoping for an apology. I simply desired hesitation. One pause. One sign told them they'd crossed a line. But no one blinked. Not her. Not him. Not anyone. So, I made a decision. No more flashbacks. No more patterns. No more polite sabotage. I was finished being useful. I was not going to argue. I was going to move on. This allowed them to confront the gaps they had never recognized. That night, after my sister called, I did not dispute. I did not explain. I did not attempt to reclaim what was taken. I reclaimed myself. The emails I sent after hanging up were not impulsive. They were precise. A checklist I'd been mentally creating for years without realizing it. The first one went to my lawyer. Prepare the official dissociation paperwork. Remove me from any joint accounts. Begin the asset protection review. Second, my financial advisor. Transfer all liquid assets to a safe trust. The immediate family is excluded. The third, my accountant. Examine all family-related payments for the last 5 years. Unauthorized ones should be flagged. Prepare the accompanying documentation. It was not about vengeance. It was about reclaiming my infrastructure. By midnight, I was hooked into the back end of the little IT company I had started from scratch. The same corporation that silently managed my parents' home security systems, online backups, mobile subscriptions, and accounting firm software licenses all fell under my corporate umbrella. All are free. All are unacknowledged. I removed their cloud cameras first, then the automated locks, and finally the smart thermostat they boasted about at every family dinner. I reconfigured the DNS setup, which disabled remote access to their home network. They no longer have access to the Wi-Fi that I established for them. When their printer failed, they no longer had to perform emergency troubleshooting. Next, consider a shared family phone plan. 5 lines. Mine, theirs, and my sister's. I did not cancel. I transferred ownership of all lines to them. If they did not accept within 72 hours, their service would be suspended. They would receive the bill. No more free calls. No more of me financing the family's communication infrastructure. Then I recalled the streaming platforms. I took a step back from supporting their services and let them tackle it on their own. It was the slightest thing, but it stung. By daybreak, text messages began to arrive. My sister. Why are the security cameras inoperable? I can't log in. My father. The mortgage company called. What have you done? My mother. You are not serious about this, are you? I did not respond to any of them. They didn't ask. They demanded that the system be brought back online. But the system was me. And I was logging out. By lunchtime, they had called. I didn't respond. I waited till the voicemail symbol appeared. My father's voice. Let us resolve this gently. Let's talk like adults. I laughed aloud. He always returned to that line talk like an adult after standing by while I was robbed, marginalized, and erased. By the evening, my sister had messaged again. Netflix is not working. Fix it. I said, you said you didn't need me. No emojis, no punctuation. This is just a fact. But I wasn't finished. I accessed the back end of their accounting firm's IT system. They had no idea I still had administrative access. They assumed I'd set it up years ago as a family favor and then let it go. They had no idea I'd been discreetly maintaining their firewall safeguards, software updates, and encrypted backups through my company. They didn't realize the domain was registered in my name. I deactivated the software license. I sent a notice through their administrative dashboard. The system's pro gratis maintenance has been discontinued with immediate effect. Please contact your new IT provider to ensure service continuity. I signed out. I waited. 30 minutes later, the number of voicemails doubled. By morning, my uncle's clinic, which also uses my company's legacy infrastructure, had called my personal line in a panic. The system was offline. They were unable to access patient records. Billing software was down. Everything that kept their business running was quietly backed by me. I did not sabotage it. I did not crash it. I just removed the support. The digital scaffolding failed because they never created one of their own. My cousin Tessa texted me that afternoon. "Did you actually pull everything?" I said, "I pulled myself." The remainder collapsed on its own. She didn't ask any other questions. Instead, she made a call. We spoke for the first time in a year. She confirmed what I had suspected. My parents had tried to distort the narrative, claiming I had gone rogue, that I was mentally unwell, I was jealous, classic. Tessa, however, did not buy it this time. She was not alone. I forwarded copies of the material to the family members who were important, not out of spite but because of precision. I did not write an editorial. I submitted audit logs, payment records, and screenshots of my name and the system architecture. I've attached a quick note. I just want you to understand the reality. There's no need to respond. That night, my father texted again. "You've made your point. Enough for now." However, it was not about making a point. It was about breaking the cycle. I revoked access to the family storage facility, which I had secretly paid for the previous 3 years. That housed my father's vintage tools and all of the seasonal decorations they enjoy displaying. Lease was canceled. The locks have changed. I called the mortgage company next. I removed myself as a co-signer for their refinance. The representative paused the call. "Do you understand that this will most likely result in a foreclosure review?" She inquired carefully. I understood. "I have confirmed the removal." 3 hours later, my mother texted. The mortgage company phoned. "Fix it." Fix. Always that term. I didn't respond. I transferred all leftover funds from the shared emergency account to a new trust that is secured, protected, and only available to me. The text grew frenzied. My sister. "You are overreacting." My mother. "Family is all you have." I looked at the last one for a minute. Then I wrote back. "I had a family. I'm not in it anymore." I turned off my phone. The next day, I contacted my lawyer to begin the process of officially separating from their company organizations. I didn't even want residual liabilities. I didn't want anything that would link me to their failing infrastructure. My lawyer, who has always been thorough, halted. "Do you want to send them a formal notice of severance?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Allow them to feel the silence. Allow them to feel what it's like when the scaffolding disappears and the person they built their system on simply goes away." The calls went unanswered. When the passwords did not work. When the safety net was removed. And for the first time, I did not feel guilty. Not to walk away. Not for allowing the structure to collapse. Not for finally getting free from under the weight they forced me to carry. They did not lose their son that day. They have lost their system. And I was not reinstalling it. I awoke to my phone vibrating non-stop, not dozens or hundreds of phone calls, texts, and voicemails stacking up. All from folks I grew up to call family. They were in panic mode, and every communication felt like a bullet. Mom's message, all uppercase without punctuation. "What have you done? We are suffering. Please fix this before it gets worse." Dad's voicemail was a rant. "You are ungrateful for what I have done. I hope it was worthwhile." He left it on repeat. Sister's group SMS to relatives. "He's being irrational." He took a step back from all support. "Do not trust him." It was marked urgent and had 12 blue check marks. They figured if they screamed loud enough, someone would break. However, silence is the loudest accusation. And I had mastered it. That morning, I read this sequence. My sister sent me pressuring text messages. Stop it or I'll go public with private information. Legal threats. My parents' lawyers are demanding that services be reinstated and trust transfers be retracted. Emotional appeals. Your nieces are afraid. We're in deep. We need our home back. Everything I expected. Predictable. Systematic. Nonetheless, they all originated from the same place. Dread. Fear of being held accountable. Fear of losing what they had taken for granted. I did not respond. I did not engage in an argument. I observed. An hour later, my lawyer forwarded the official cease and desist letter from my sister's attorney, demanding that I stop disrupting services or face injunction and unspecified repercussions. He continued, "They will sue if necessary." My lawyer's note was calm. "They may file. Let us see if they do. Your acts were lawful, recorded, and justifiable." I leaned back. Heart is steady. The storm has begun. However, storms eventually run out of thunder. By mid-afternoon, the family had rallied allies. Uncle Marvin, their banking pal, texted, "You know legal fees will bankrupt them. Think twice." Nora shared vague family values postings on Facebook, insinuating that I was toxic, selfish, and immature. They were all nervous. They tried to play the victim. They banded together. But I'd already provided the documentation. I uploaded a secure version of the audit logs and transcripts to a secret legal Dropbox, which is only accessible to a neutral lawyer. Each transaction, every account gets reviewed. Each email thread, transparent logging, time-stamped, ready for discovery. Then the media began. Well, not the media, but rumors. Family acquaintances have contacted me for information. Friends informed me that they had received forwarded versions of our group chats. My universe broadened to include their talk. That evening, I witnessed the crescendo. Mom's lawyer sent an email demanding an injunction, emergency compliance, money damages. Dad's precisely worded letter claimed mental pain, reputational damage, and a breach of trust. They placed the entire blame on me. They clothed it in love. "We merely did this to get her started. We never intended to harm you." Classic spin. Their version, "We gave the money." He exposed us to cold blood. Their pressure was increasing, but below it was ridiculous. They broke into my safe. They took my money, cut me off, and accused me of rebelling. I had a look at the inbox, which was packed with demands. Then I sent everything to my lawyer and responded, "Under review. My next steps will be directed by counsel. Until then, I stand solid on my decision. The infrastructure is down. The trust is gone. I did not provide a signature. I did not soften the tone, because there was no more room for warmth." Later that night, my sister texted again. "If you truly cared about this family, you would not resort to legal measures. You'd simply give back." I halted. I typed, "I gave everything. You've taken it twice. Hit the send button." Then it was quiet. Not the electrifying, foreboding stillness of danger. However, where connection once was, there is now an absolute, deafening nothingness. Their voices faded. Their systems remained inert. Their defenses began to deteriorate. But more crucially, they understood I would not go back to the old rules. They had written the regulations without asking me. Christmas lights were unplugged in the basement. Cameras are offline. Shared drives are inaccessible. Checking my phone. There was no call. There's no text. There is no pleading left unseen. Because the source of this storm was not anger. It was the result. They developed a system. I untangled it. And now they face the fallout, without even understanding how to construct a new framework without me. They approached my door as if they were arriving for a truce. All three of them, my mother, father, and sister, standing on the porch, dressed in anguish. Not dressed for battle, not dressed to apologize, just polished, practiced. Rena opened the door. She didn't invite them inside. She just said, "You can stand." There. I remained seated. I could hear my mother's voice cracking before she began speaking. "We didn't come to fight. We just want to talk." Rena stood away, allowing the words to hang in the air like smoke from a fire that had already consumed the house. I looked up. Finally, they stood. Dad talked first. "You look tired, son." I didn't respond. Mom took control, practiced, and trembled. "We've made mistakes. It was never supposed to go this far. You cut everything off. You didn't have to make it so final. Then she added the line that they'd all been working toward. We need you. There it was. Now we miss you. Now we're sorry. Just what you need. As if I were still a utility, a feature, a fix. I took a step forward, Rena still standing by me. You don't need me. You need what I gave you. And that's gone. Dad's voice became harsh. This family falls apart without you. That's not a family, I responded. That's a business model. Sister stepped forward, enraged. So you're just going to throw everything away over what one bad night? I laughed once, short, cold. This wasn't one night, it was 2 decades. You regarded me as if I were a backup, infrastructure, or a fuse that could be reset at any time. But the power has been cut. Mom's voice broke into genuine tears. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were overwhelmed. We didn't know how much you did. I stared at her. That line we didn't expect struck like a slap. You didn't ask because you didn't care. It worked. That was enough. Dad tried again, this time quietly. You're our son. We raised you. You owe us some humanity. No, I replied. You raised me to believe I owed you everything. You spent it. It's gone. Silence. The wind blew stronger now. It was frigid, sharp, like the truth. I took a step closer so they could hear every word. I didn't walk away because of money. I walked away because you never saw just what I could provide. Finally, I looked at my sister. You didn't just lose the perks. You lost connection. Then I examined all of them. You were not unkind. You simply did not notice me. And I'm done paying for it. Rena slowly closed the door behind them. They did not knock again. I stood in solitude. For the first time, it did not feel empty. It felt clean, clear, final. They did not cry as they went. They did not beg. They merely stood there shocked because they recognized something they didn't expect. I could leave. That I would not return. That I meant it. After excluding my fiancé from the wedding, Mom cut me out of her will and called me dead. Now half the family's boycotting her wedding. I'm Rachel, a 28-year-old woman who has been with her fiancé Brian, a 30-year-old male, for 6 years. We met during our final year of college while working on a group project for our environmental science class. I recall being captivated by his dedication to conservation and his gentle gaze. We quickly became friends, connecting over our mutual love of outdoors and horrible sci-fi films. Our connection progressed slowly but steadily. Brian was always patient and compassionate, never pushing me to progress quicker than I was comfortable with. He understood I had trust concerns from previous relationships, so he gave me the time and space I needed to open up. About a year into our relationship, Brian was diagnosed with Crohn's illness. It was a frightening and uncertain period for both of us. I recall sitting in the doctor's office, holding his hand as we listened to the explanation of how this chronic ailment will affect his life. Brian was obviously unhappy and concerned about how this would affect our future relationship. However, it simply increased my affections for him. Seeing how bravely he addressed this diagnosis and how determined he was not to let it define him only made me admire him more. I immersed myself into researching his health and learned everything I could about how to help him. There have been difficult times, of course. Brian has had a couple serious flare-ups that required hospital stays, but we handled each struggle together, and it has only brought us closer. Last year, while hiking to our favorite waterfall, Brian insisted on going even though he wasn't feeling well. He dropped down on one knee and proposed. It was the simplest yes of my life. Now for some background on my familial situation. My father died from pancreatic cancer when I was 12 years old. It was a very brief battle, lasting around 8 months from diagnosis to the conclusion. Those months were a flurry of hospital visits, hushed conversations between my parents that would abruptly end when I entered the room, and a rising sense of dread that I couldn't quite comprehend at the time. My father was my hero. He was a high school history teacher that his students adored for his bad dad jokes and true enthusiasm for the topic. At home, he was always up for an unexpected dance party in the kitchen or a late-night ice cream run. Losing him left a void in my life. My mother, Emily, at 52, was understandably heartbroken by Dad's passing. For months, she was hardly functioning. I remember having to remind her to eat and almost beg her to take a shower. She eventually immersed herself into her career as a real estate agent, leaving before I awoke and returning late at night. For years, there were just the two of us, rattling around in our oversized house. We became close out of necessity, bonding over our mutual sadness. But there was always a part of my mother that appeared missing, as if she had buried a bit of herself beside my father. When I was in high school, my mother began seeing a therapist. I began to see traces of her old self returning. She began cooking again. Dad had always been the family chef, but he had also started gardening and dating. Nothing serious, just some coffee dates here and there. I went to college with the hope that my mother would finally heal. We talked frequently, and she was happier than she had been in years. That's why I was overjoyed when, during my sophomore year, she called to inform me she had met someone important. Frank, a 55-year-old man, appeared fantastic at first. He was a successful businessman who exuded charm and confidence. He made my mother laugh in a manner that I hadn't heard since before Dad died. I was delighted for her. But over time, I began to notice things. Frank would make subtle barbs at my decision to major in environmental science, rather than something practical like business. How he'd make comments about my appearance, such as, "You'd be so pretty if you just put in a little effort." My mother would always dismiss it, saying he was simply teasing or that I was being oversensitive. When I introduced Brian to them, I could sense my mother's disgust. She was nice, yet her interactions with him lacked warmth. Frank was blatantly disdainful and scarcely acknowledged Brian's attempts at conversation. My mother's attitude toward Brian has deteriorated with time. She has made statements about how his health difficulties will limit my opportunities in life. When Brian had to cancel arrangements with them due to a flare-up, she suggested I find someone more dependable. I've always protected Brian, but I'll admit that there were moments when I didn't push back as forcefully as I could have. I was terrified of hurting my relationship with my mother and losing the only parent I had left. But, looking back, I see I was allowing her to mistreat the person I love the most in the world. This leads us to last week. My mother called, overflowing with enthusiasm. She and Frank had become engaged and were planning a fall wedding. I congratulated her, suppressing my confused sentiments for Frank. Then she said that she did not want Brian to attend the wedding since his health difficulties could generate a commotion, and she wanted the day to be perfect. I was stunned into silence for a moment. When I found my voice, I made it clear to her that this was utterly unacceptable. Brian's condition is well managed, and he would never want to draw attention to himself during someone else's event. Plus, he'll be her son-in-law. How could she possibly consider excluding him? My mother became defensive, insisting she was simply being sensible. She went on about how hard she had worked to organize this wedding and how she deserved everything to go perfectly. I couldn't believe what I heard. I informed her that if Brian was not welcome, I would not be attending either. This resulted in a major debate. My mother accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. She went on a big diatribe about how much she'd given up as a single mother, how she'd put her life on hold for me, and how I owed it to her to be present on her special day. I responded that she was the only one being selfish by excluding my fiancé over something he couldn't control. The phone ended with her in tears and me shivering with rage. Since then, she has alternated between guilt-tripping texts, "I guess I was a terrible mother if this is how you treat me," and screaming voicemails demanding an apology. Some family members have contacted me, suggesting that I simply give up to keep the peace. My Aunt Amanda recommended that I attend the wedding alone and then have a separate celebration with Brian afterwards. But the idea of attending an occasion that explicitly excludes the guy I love makes me sick. I know my mother has gone through a lot. Losing Dad was traumatic for both of us, and I'm relieved she's found happiness again, even if I have misgivings about Frank. However, I cannot condone her behavior of Brian. This is about more than just one wedding. It's about her entire attitude toward him and her inability to accept him as a long-term partner in my life. Am I being unreasonable? Should I give up and go to the wedding alone to please her? Or should I remain firm? I'm torn and could need some outside perspective. Am I the terrible guy for refusing to attend my mother's wedding unless my fiancé is also invited? Thank you all for your encouraging remarks and letters. Reading over everything helped me feel less insane about the issue. A few days after my initial post, I was at home working on reports from my job at the local wildlife sanctuary when I received a tap on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was astonished to see my mother standing there when I opened it. For a brief moment, I thought she'd come to apologize. But as soon as I saw her face, I knew that wasn't the case. Her eyes were red and puffy, as if she had been sobbing. But there was a harshness to her expression that reminded me of our worst disputes. I hesitated, but eventually decided to let her in. As soon as the door closed behind her, she burst into a hysterical speech about how upset she was that I would forsake her on her wedding day. She described how she had always envisaged having her only daughter by her side as she walked down the aisle, and how she had fantasized about this day for years. I stood there, arms crossed, while she continued on. A part of me wanted to soothe her because watching my mother weep has always been difficult for me. But a larger part of me was upset that she was attempting to manipulate me in this way. When she finally paused for air, I spoke out. I told her I wanted to attend her wedding, but not at the expense of excluding Brian. I reminded her that he was going to be her son-in-law, and that purposefully not inviting him was harmful not only to him, but also to me. That's when the situation changed. My mother's emotional countenance hardened, and she began explaining how she was only trying to protect me. She complained about things like, "What if he has an episode during the ceremony? You'll be so embarrassed." And she added, "I just don't want you to be burdened with taking care of him when you should be celebrating with me." I was furious. I made it clear to her that Brian is not a burden, but rather my partner. I stated that the one thing that would humiliate me is having a mother who discriminates against persons with medical conditions. She became enraged and accused me of preferring Brian over her. I pointed out that she was the one who forced me to select in the first place by not inviting him. Then she used her trump card. She threatened to leave me out of her will if I didn't attend the wedding alone. I was stunned. In all of our disagreements over the years, she had never gone this low. For a brief moment, I remembered my upbringing, and how my mother used money or gifts to attempt to buy my affection or cooperation after a dispute. I took a deep breath and told her she could keep the money. I was not for sale. I won't forget the look on her face. A combination of amazement, rage, and something more. Almost as if she was seeing me for the first time. Without saying anything further, she turned and departed, slamming the door behind her. I sank into the couch, exhausted. I must have sat there for hours, repeating the exchange in my mind. I kept thinking about my father, wondering what he would say if he could see us today. He had always disliked disagreement, preferring to settle it with a terrible joke or an impromptu family game night. Later that evening, I received an email from Frank. The subject line stated, "Let's work this out," which made me roll my eyes. He wrote that he understood all perspectives and wished to propose a compromise. Brian could attend the ceremony but leave before the reception so he wouldn't become exhausted. I was seething when I read his arrogant remarks. I responded by noting that banning Brian from half the event was still unacceptable discrimination. I also mentioned that if they were truly worried about Brian's comfort, they would let him decide what he could tolerate. Frank replied shortly. He claimed I was being tough and that I should appreciate my mother's wish for a flawless day. He went on about how stressed out my mother was with the wedding planning and how my intransigence was exacerbating the situation. I blocked his email address after that. The following day, my phone rang. It was my Aunt Susan, my mother's younger sister. I almost didn't respond, but I've always been close to Susan. Growing up, she was more like a big sister to me, always ready to offer advice on mails or assist with my math assignments. Susan began by stating she had heard about the fight with my mother. She stated I was being too harsh and that I should be more understanding of my mother's situation as a widow. She reminded me of how difficult it was for my mother to learn to be both my father and my mother during the first few years after his death. I listened intently, tears welling in my eyes as I recalled those awful days. But then Susan said something that brought me back into the present. Sometimes we have to sacrifice a little for our family. Your mom deserves to have the wedding she wants." I took a big breath and informed Susan that while I appreciated her viewpoint, she was missing the point. This was about more than just one wedding. It was about my mother's overall treatment of Brian and her inability to embrace him as a long-term part of my life. I stated that by excluding Brian, my mother was refusing to accept our entire family. Susan groaned and commented, "You're so stubborn just like your father." She intended that as a critique, I believe, but I interpreted it as a compliment. My father never tolerated unfair treatment of anyone. I recall him getting into intense disputes with relatives who made racial remarks during family events, refusing to back down, even when it would have been easier to remain silent. After hanging up with Susan, I called Brian at work. Hearing his voice immediately made me feel calmer. I updated him on everything that had happened. He listened intently before telling me how proud he was of me for standing my position. He even offered to forgo the wedding personally to maintain peace, but I declined. This is about far more than a single event. This entire situation has been quite taxing, yet it has also provided some clarity. I'm viewing my mother and some family members in a new light, and I'm more certain than ever that Brian is the person I want to spend my life with. I'm sticking with my choice not to attend unless Brian is completely included and accepted. My mother made her decision, and she now has to live with the repercussions. I will not compromise my ideals or our relationship in order to make her happy. My mother has allegedly been on a smear campaign, telling anybody who will listen that I am leaving her and spoiling her wedding by refusing to attend without Brian. She paints herself as the sufferer and I as the ungrateful daughter. Last week, I saw my cousin Alice in the farmer's market. Alice and I grew up together. Our mothers are sisters who were only a few months apart in age. As children, we were inseparable, sharing everything from clothes to the first sips of stolen wine at family gatherings. When Alice noticed me, her eyes widened and she dashed to my stall. I sell homemade jams and preserves produced from fruit grown in my garden, which is a passion I learned from my father. I assumed she was delighted to see me, but as soon as she opened her mouth, I realized it wasn't a friendly visit. Alice immediately started telling me how I needed to forgive my mother and stop being so selfish. I was shocked. Alice and I have always been close, and I expected her to appreciate my point of view. But it turns out that my mother reached out to her first with her distorted version of events. I tried to explain my side, reminding Alice of all the times my mother had made disparaging remarks about Brian's health over the years, but Alice wasn't having it. She said, "Your mom has been alone for so long. Can't you just give her this one day?" I replied that if it was truly about being there for my mother, Brian would be invited as well because he is going to be her son-in-law. Alice rolled her eyes and replied, "Come on. We both know he's not going to be around long-term. Why risk ruining the wedding photos?" I was very furious. I told her she had no right to make assumptions about my relationship, and her attitude was blatantly ableist. She became agitated and felt I was overreacting. I ended up packing up my stand and leaving early to avoid saying something I would later regret. That night, as I was stress baking, another habit I picked up from my father, I received a group text from some extended family members with whom I'm not even close. My great-aunt Sylvia, who I haven't seen since I was a teenager, and my mother's cousin Marvin, who I don't think I'd recognize if I saw him on the street, were all telling me that I should do the right thing and go to the wedding alone. One particular message stood out. It came from my uncle Greg, my father's younger brother. Greg and I were close when I was younger. He was the fun uncle who always got me wonderful science kits for Christmas and taught me how to skip stones. But after Dad died, we drifted apart. Greg's message reads, "Your father would be so disappointed in you." These statements felt like a physical blow. I found myself wondering, would my dad really be disappointed in me for standing up for my fiancée? For refusing to attend an event that discriminated against him? I reflected on my youth and all the lessons my father had given me about sticking up for what is right. I recall him refusing to do business with a company that would not hire women in management roles, even though it cost him a large contract. I reflected on how he constantly went out of his way to make others feel included, particularly those who were frequently forgotten or excluded. That was the final straw. I responded to the entire group, explaining why I wasn't attending and how cruel and discriminating my mother's behavior had been. I said that my father taught me to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult, and that is precisely what I am doing. I ended by saying, anyone who supports excluding Brian is no longer welcome in my life. The fallout has been significant. I've received everything from angry messages to sobbing voicemails. My phone has been vibrating nonstop with notifications. However, a few family members have contacted me personally to express their support and admiration for my decision to take a stand. My nephew Aaron, who has type 1 diabetes, wrote a particularly moving comment about how much it means to him to see someone standing up to discrimination based on health concerns. Brian has been there for me through it all. He listened to me rage and cry, comforted me when I needed it, and allowed me space to process on my own. Seeing how nasty and judgmental my family can be has just strengthened my belief that he is the one I want to make a life with. We've started to consider eloping rather than having a large wedding. The notion of dealing with more family strife on what should be a pleasant day is overwhelming. Furthermore, the thought of a modest, intimate wedding centered on our love rather than appeasing others is beginning to seem enticing. I'm sticking firm on my decision. My mother and anyone who supports her acts can kick rocks. I'm done sacrificing my ideals to make others happy. Well, the wedding was last Saturday. As planned, I did not attend, but there have been some unexpected developments that I would like to convey. The night before the wedding, I received a call from my mother's best friend, Amanda. She has known me since I was a child and has always felt like an aunt to me. Amanda was there for me during my awkward middle school years, my first heartbreak in high school, and when my father died. Amanda said she wanted to let me know about something that happened during the rehearsal dinner. Apparently, my mother had been drinking extensively and began bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen. She was yelling horrible things about my being dead to her, and that she wasted her life raising such an ungrateful brat. I was wounded, but not shocked. What Amanda said next took me by surprise. Apparently, my mother's new husband, Frank, rose up and urged her to stop. He claimed she was embarrassing herself and should be embarrassed of the way she treated me and Brian. According to Amanda, it became a huge scene, with my mother yelling at Frank and storming out. I wasn't sure how I felt about this revelation. On the one hand, I was relieved someone had finally stood up to my mother. On the other hand, it was difficult to hear how far she had fallen. I thanked Amanda for informing me and tried not to think about it anymore. The next morning, the day of the wedding, I received a text from Frank, of all people. He apologized for his role in everything and acknowledged how terrible it was to exclude Brian. He stated that he had only been doing what my mother wanted to keep her happy, but witnessing how nasty she was made him realize he had made a tremendous mistake. Frank explained that he understood if I could not forgive him, but he wanted me to know he was sorry. He also stated that he had requested Brian be invited to the wedding, even if it was last minute. He indicated the invitation was still open in case we decided to come. I showed Brian the message, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to go, to see if this may be the turning point in our relationship with my mother. However, a large portion believed that it was too little, too late. Brian said he'd support whatever decision I made, but gently reminded me of all the anguish my mother had caused over the years. In the end, I chose not to go. I contacted Frank back, thanking him for the apology and invitation, but explaining that I didn't think it would be a good idea to attend. I explained that I needed time before considering any form of relationship with him or my mother. Brian and I spent the day before the wedding enjoying a picnic near the lake where we first said, "I love you." It was a wonderful, tranquil day, in sharp contrast to what I had planned for the wedding. I heard through the grapevine that the wedding was tense. Several family members declined to attend in solidarity with me, which touched me. And my mother was apparently in a bad attitude the entire trip, snapping at everyone and grumbling about how awful everything was. It's been a few days and I'm still absorbing what's happened. I haven't heard directly from my mother since the wedding. Her silence hurts me in some ways, but also relieves me. I am not sure I am prepared to confront her yet. I'm attempting to focus on the good. My bond with Brian is stronger than ever. Some of my family members have displayed their actual colors, both positive and negative. And I've discovered that I'm stronger than I realized, capable of fighting for what's right, even when it's extremely difficult. I don't know what the future holds for my connection with my mother. Part of me hopes that this will serve as a wake-up call for her to reflect on her behavior. But I am not holding my breath. For the time being, my primary emphasis is on moving forward with those who actually love and support me, Brian.